Welcome to the Fox Robbins Business Show. This show is all about developing your business. And I'm your host, Bill Fox, and the co-host is Cliff Robbins. Cliff, you're looking great tonight.
Thanks, Bill. I'm very excited about being here, and I'm very much looking forward to this show because we're going to do some straight talking about how people can start their own small business.
Now, this show, as a very important point behind this show, is about developing businesses on Cape Cod that will attract and hold top-notch talent with meaningful and higher-paying job positions. We all know about this. We all talk about it. The question is, how are we going to get there going forward? And the starting point for the Fox Robbins Show goes back to the Economic Summit on Cape Cod, which was back last October. Cliff, you were there.
Yes, I was, and I found it very interesting. A lot of what was said there has been said before and really was brought to the forefront of people's, particularly the Cape Cod leaders' minds, and now we're going to address some of those issues.
That's right. There was a keynote speaker for that Economic Summit named Peter Francis, who was with the New England Economic Partnership. And he delivered some not-so-welcome news and really scared the heck out of an audience of top business and community leaders, government people, and so forth. Cliff, it was interesting. He didn't bring up points that are brand spanking new ideas. I think the idea here is that he brought a lot of information together at one time, at one point, and it's scary when you look at it all at one point.
Yep.
And he came to a conclusion that that Cape Cod going forward may not be on a sustainable track. That's what's scary.
Right.
Scary. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Peter did, excuse me, put together a lot of what's been talked about over the previous 2 or 3 years in things like the Governor's Competitiveness Council, and he did collate it, so to speak, put it together and present it in a very poignant way, and it opened the eyes of a lot of the leaders of the Cape Cod business community. I
hasten to say, he wasn't trying to scare anybody. He was just trying to be realistic and package, a lot of valuable information in a short span and get everyone to focus on it. But he also meant to say the Cape is not in desperate condition by any means. In fact, the Cape is doing quite well right now.
Absolutely.
But he's talking about for the longer term,
right,
that if we keep going on the same track, we're not on a sustainable track, and we have to be aware of it. And we can correct, and we can do things that are good for the Cape. True?
Absolutely true. There's a lot that can be done. He did point out certain issues that need to be addressed, but they are easily addressed issues, and we're going to talk about some of them.
Now, I mentioned some of the not-so-welcome information that he passed out included some of the following. Number one, increasing healthcare cost. That's not a new topic. We know about it. Healthcare cost has been going up for decades. It ain't stopping. It's going to keep going.
Right.
And it's going to be a severe, what his point was, it's going to be a severe challenge to a lot of people on the Cape because we have an aging population on the Cape that requires a lot of medical care, and where is that money going to be coming from? He's just making that point.
Right.
Number two, the school system. There's a possibility that the support may not be there in the long run for the school system. He said that right now there's approximately 26,400 people, I believe, kids in school, but that's 4,500 fewer than in 2000. Trend is down.
Right.
And cost, trend of pupil size going down, cost is skyrocketing.
Right.
Now it's between 13,000, 14,000 per student. On most of the Cape, on the outer Cape, it's worse than that. It's more like 16,000 per kid.
Right.
And that's going to get worse. So that represents a threat, and the long-term support may not be there.
Right.
Next one is increasing property taxes. Property taxes are high on the Cape. Not a piece of news. We know that. But we also say that, or Peter Francis was making the point that again is a trend that is going in the wrong direction, to expect all of the money out of property tax.
Right.
That, in fact, Cliff, that's where business comes in. Business is an economic engine, and without that business development going forward on the Cape could be in trouble. True?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we're talking about. If the schools are requiring more and more funding because there are fewer and fewer students, we need more than just residential property taxes to fund those issues. And that's a great expression that you just used. Business is an economic engine.
Yes.
And that can very much help that
Right.
situation.
And speaking of which, see, if property taxes are remain as a primary source for the communities to raise money,
Right.
that will also hit a peak, which can then lead to the next item, which is decreasing home values.
Right.
And that really begins to hurt here on the Cape, because when you start decreasing the value of the homes, there could be a bad seed. And another one is the next point that he made was that the workforce growth is at zero. Workforce growth. That's another interesting item, Cliff, because if you wanted businesses either to start here or to come from another location, but they're looking at a zero workforce growth, that's not good.
That really is a very bad state. That's probably the one that I'm most concerned about, that to attract businesses to the Cape, for people to start businesses on the Cape, and to grow businesses on the Cape, they're going to need people.
Right.
And if they're not here, then the businesses won't come here.
And those people need to be able to afford to be here.
Exactly, and they need to make the
Have
right
jobs
salaries.
that have
Good paying
right.
jobs.
Yeah, right, that's right.
Absolutely.
Another next point that Peter Francis made was the loss of working adults in the 35 to 44 age category. That's the category people they get married, they have children, they're trying to raise a family, they're trying to live on the Cape. They need to make the kind of money that you need, to do that, to enjoy that. And he said that group, we're losing that group.
Yeah, absolutely, because those jobs that they need to do to make the kind of money they need to make to support a wife and 2 children, that job isn't here.
Not here.
Not here on the Cape right now. But we can solve that problem too.
And in the meantime, he made the next point, which was there is really too much gain in the 75-year-old plus category. I think that there's the Cape in the long term starts to look like a weightlifter's barbell. We'll have some younger people on one end and some older people on the end, but the people in the middle is going to be pretty skinny.
Right.
Which is not good for the long term.
Not good for the economic engine that we're talking about.
Now there was one piece of good news that Peter Francis mentioned, is that there has been an increase in the age group of 15 to 34. Those are young people. They're looking for the long-term, meaningful career opportunity, higher-paying jobs. We must keep those people, Cliff.
Right.
Cliff, we got to keep those people here.
And how are we going to keep those people? We've got to create good-paying jobs for them, green jobs right here on Cape Cod.
Now there is an overlay to this whole situation is something that you and I have talked about, and you and I have identified what we call, this is an attitude thing, you and I call Old Cape, New Cape.
Right.
Old Cape is, you remember the famous song from Patti Page, sand dunes and salty air and lobster stew served with an ocean view, the glorious Cape with beaches, eel grass, sand dunes and whatever, and rural, and that's part of the Cape still. But
You don't want me to sing that song, believe me.
you don't want to sing this song.
No.
But the new Cape is people who want the Cape to be modern and up to date, to be developed, to be sustainable, and more than that, to have a balance. Remember that weightlifter thing? I mean, we have maybe too many young people and too many older people. We need the people in the middle too,
Right.
so that we have an overall balance.
Right.
And that's what we need to be talking about. Now, there's going to have to be, Cliff, there's going to have to be some compromises between the old Cape thinking and the new Cape. We don't want the Cape to be overrun with development, but it can no longer be considered to be just a laid-back rural area anymore.
Absolutely.
True?
That's exactly what we're talking about, but it can be intelligently developed. And the word develop sometimes scares people.
Yeah.
It doesn't have
Well,
to.
it does. It is scary.
It doesn't have to, though.
No, it doesn't.
If done thoughtfully.
Well, I know the thoughts that
Yep.
I know for a fact, knowing you and the thoughts that you're going to bring to our viewers about business is not about more asphalt pavement
Right.
and brick and mortar and so forth
Right in high-rise buildings.
and high rise.
No.
That's right.
No.
But we're going to talk about that because I know it's in your thoughts.
Right.
But the question at the end of the day, after all the discussion with the economic summit, at the end of the day, the question was, say, we're all here, we all love the Cape. We all want to see the best things happen, for the Cape. But you and I really like that challenge that was brought up by Wendy Northcross, who's the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce.
Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce.
Cape Cod Chamber
Right.
of Commerce. And she said, the Cape has many needs today. The question is, what are we going to do about it?
Absolutely. Do is the operative word.
Action. You love action.
I love
Okay.
action.
All right. And what you and I really want to do, Cliff, is we want to create an open forum, and we want the power of TV to get the message out about discussion about business
Right.
and good business development
Right.
for the future. For the future of Cape Cod. And so I think that this show, I want to make one point, Cliff, and I think this is very important between the two of us, is that this show is not about politics. We don't have a hidden agenda. We don't have a sales pitch or a point of view. We just want to talk about business.
Right.
So we wanted to steal the expression from Senator John McCain and his bus tour through New Hampshire. He called it the Straight Talk Express.
Right.
In a way, that's what we want, a straight talk about business, no hidden agenda, but we want to develop, we want business to develop in a positive mode. Now the Cape has, what's interesting when we think about the Cape has an amazing asset. And that asset is that the Cape has a lot of really smart people. And it's kind of amazing that way. But you and I, we're going to make use of that asset, and we're going to get the top-notch, interesting people with a point of view about where the Cape should be headed. We're going to bring them on this show, and we're going to interview them and get information out of them.
Absolutely.
We do not have a guest on this first show, but on subsequent shows, we will feature interesting people that I think that the viewers will want to see and hear from. Now, on businesses, speaking of businesses on the Cape right now, I mean, if you look at the inventory today, we really have two kinds of businesses on the Cape. I call them Category A, Category B. Category A is something you and I have discussed often. And we call these businesses naturally occurring.
Right.
Why? Well, because the Cape is a resort area. It's a beautiful area. It's a great place for retirement.
Right.
And so as a natural result of that, I mean, because the Cape is a resort, people are going to come here. You're going to have motels. You're going to have restaurants. You're going to have gift shops. You're going to have art studios. and so forth.
Right.
You're also going to have a lot of healthcare on the Cape. As a matter of fact, healthcare is the biggest business on the Cape, the
single
biggest employer.
Yeah,
Employer.
single biggest
Isn't
employer.
that true?
Absolutely. Single
Yeah.
biggest employer
Right,
is
right.
hospital system.
And so you're also on the Cape. I mean, of course, you're going to have gas stations. You're going to have plumbers. You're going to have landscaping, gardeners and so forth. There are certain businesses that are here. They occur naturally. They're going to happen no matter what.
They're part of the infrastructure.
Part of the
that's
infrastructure.
Needed. Right.
Hey, don't forget, Cliff, those bankers and lawyers and
Accountants.
investment counselors who
Right.
want to take care of your money too.
Absolutely.
We got them too.
Yeah.
Look at the yellow pages. The number of lawyers. It's astounding.
A lot of them in there.
Yeah. So we got that. But this is already happening, and you and I don't have to pump any encouragement in that direction because those businesses are going to be here.
As you said, that's natural.
Right.
Those are just naturally occurring.
Then we have Category B.
Right.
What's Category B? There are businesses there are also businesses on the Cape that you and I are going to talk about in subsequent shows, and those businesses are not naturally occurring. They're here. We're glad they're here, but they could be anywhere.
Right.
They could be in, Colorado or Texas for all I know, but I mean they're here,
Right.
which is great, and we want more of them.
Right.
And those kind of businesses also maybe are the area where we can talk about expectation of long-range career opportunity and higher paying jobs.
Right.
With these Category B businesses that either are here, they come here from a different location, or they start.
Right. Exactly.
They start here,
Yeah.
and that's what I know that lights your fire.
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah. That's the
good.
one I think we have the most opportunity in.
That's right.
Yep.
And I think as far as that's concerned is that you and I, we're not going to be talking about just any kind of business. We're going to be talking about businesses that take advantage of the latest marketing techniques, about product innovation, or service, service innovation,
Right.
new modes of delivery, delivery of goods and services,
Right.
and internet.
Big piece of it. Ding.
A big piece of it,
Right.
I know that I'm hitting your favorite deal
Right.
here. I know that in order for businesses on the Cape to succeed long term, and this is another one of your favorite topics, is that businesses need to focus on new technology. And technologies flatten the earth.
There you go.
Now there's an interesting one because I know that you're very much an advocate of the book that was written by Thomas L. Friedman,
Right.
New York Times,
Yes.
an author and commentator, on TV and so
Right.
forth, wrote "The World Is Flat."
Right.
Now we not here to sell books. We ain't hustling books tonight.
I've never met him.
But you and I acknowledge his contribution to modern thinking.
Absolutely.
And we do recommend. This is good for anyone
Good read.
to understand the new reality,
Right.
and technology has everything to do with this the flattening of the earth.
Yeah, when Mr. Friedman's talking about flattening the earth, I use a slightly different expression that technology is taking geography out of the equation.
Oh, that's
But
that's
he
great.
wrote a great book, so I'll stick with The World Is Flat. It's catchier.
Now, the types of businesses that we want to see here on the Cape, Cliff, though, are not just going to happen. I mean, we can't go to the hammock, with a lemonade
Right.
and relax.
What are we
and that
going to
it's gonna
do?
occur. The question is, like Wendy Northcross,
She's right.
what are we going to do about it?
Absolutely.
The answer for you and me, our answer, is to create a public forum, public discussion on developing your business. That's what our contribution.
That's what we're going to do.
And to
We're
bring
gonna
the
try to
most
do.
interesting people onto this show to discuss new ideas going forward.
You bet.
But we don't want to, I just want to make a point though, we don't want to ignore existing businesses by any means. Existing businesses on the Cape need to succeed going forward. They need to be adopting new technologies and new techniques, and they need to hear the ideas from the best thinkers on the Cape. And so for tonight, we've got a great show in mind for the viewers. And tonight the discussion is, so you want to start a business, which is one of Cliff's favorite topics.
Right.
And but before we get into the meat of that show, I want to introduce in this very first show something called Cliff's Notes. And the reason I want to do that is because Cliff is very knowledgeable person about the business scene in New England, in general, in Massachusetts, and Cape Cod in particular, because he travels widely, he meets a lot of people, he is constantly working with people who are trying to start new businesses, and he's going to tell us all about that. But he is someone who has commentary about the business scene today. So Cliff, let's hear today's Cliff's Notes.
All right, thank you, Bill. As a senior business advisor for the MSBDC, which is the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center, I've been working on Cape Cod for between 6 and 7 years now, and I have worked with well over 1,000, possibly as many as 1,500 small business entrepreneur wannabes and entrepreneurs. And what I've noticed is that there's a great opportunity for people, if they pay attention to the rules of business, to create successful businesses and to take the businesses that you mentioned, Bill, that are already here and to grow them very profitably and very well. Now, there's a reality in the world. We all know what's going on. The economy is struggling. It's not doing well. People are being laid off. There's lots of people coming to me that want to start a new small business, and I have clients who are struggling right now to maintain the level of small business that they've enjoyed maybe in the past few years. That's the bad news. But the news isn't all bad, because where there's a threat, there's also an opportunity. And the fact is that the opportunities on Cape Cod and in the world, quite frankly, there's a lot of them. There's certain things that are never going to change in the world of business, in the world period, in the world markets, and that is the fact that markets have wants and needs. And if you as a small business person understand your market, if you understand what the wants and needs of the market, if you find that need and then you figure out a way to fill that need, you can build a very successful small business regardless of the fact that the economy may not be doing well. You're not that big a piece of the economy if you're running a $500,000 or $1 million business here on Cape Cod, but you can be very successful doing it. Now, if you have a dream, if you have a vision, and this is something you've always wanted to do, it's like the American dream. You want to run, own, start your own small business, then you can do it. You can certainly do it. You have to do your homework. You're just not going to jump into this thing and just shoot from the hip and try to start something without doing a lot of planning and a lot of forethought. And yes, you've heard it 1,000 times, sitting yourself down, writing a marketing plan, writing a business plan. What's really important about what you're doing is not so much the final document you wind up with. What really is important to you as a would-be entrepreneur or a business that wants to expand its business is the process that your thinking goes through when you get structured thinking about writing your marketing plan or writing your business plan. Because that's what you're going to go ahead and execute and hopefully build yourself a successful small business. It takes courage. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of persistence. And another thing it takes is money. And we're going to talk about that later in the show, about the kind of money that it takes to start a small business and where to go get it. I want you to understand also, please, that the most important reason you're starting a small business is to create a customer. And a lot of people forget that. You will have to create a customer or you don't have a small business. You're not going to make profit. You're not going to make any money. It's all about creating a customer. And the way you do that is by creating and executing a good marketing plan and being innovative. And the tools are available for you to help you go ahead and pull dollars, quite frankly, from the rest of the world that is over the bridge. When I say the rest of the world, I'm talking about Massachusetts, I'm talking about New Hampshire, New York, Missouri. There are people in those states that can be serviced by people right here on Cape Cod, thanks to technology. And we'll talk more about that later on too. The world is in fact flat. You need a website. You need to understand how to work your website. There are certain issues that you need to really understand and work with. And we're going to talk a lot about that during this show and subsequent shows.
That's good. Hey, Cliff, you said the magic words a couple of minutes ago. You said, as long as you follow the rules, because that causes me to say tonight, we're basing a lot of this show on the fact that you started and ran your own business. You've been there.
Yes, I have the scars.
You crawled through the cut glass and the nails, and you've done it.
And with 2 arrows in my back.
And but you're on the other side of the table,
yeah,
helping people start their own businesses.
Right.
But what over all this vast experience, you have developed what you call Cliff's top 10 rules for starting a business.
I called them the top 10 rules, and you put the word Cliff on them. So thank you.
But you there are rules that running through your mind.
Yes.
When you think about someone who wants to start a business.
Right.
And rule number 1, I love this one. Rule number 1, Cliff says, above all else, don't fool yourself. And Cliff, I'm going to have to ask you to explain that, but I think I'm going to love this explanation.
Yeah, you really, you'd like that one, didn't you?
Yes.
That's why I started off, we put that one first. No, don't fool yourself. Don't kid yourself. A lot of people will come to me and say, I want to start my own small business, and they'll be talking about the fact that they're sick of corporate America, and they want to live a balanced life, and et cetera, et cetera. And I tell them, look, you want to live a balanced life, that's great. But let me tell you something. When you start your own small business, a balanced life isn't a 25-hour work week. There's 168 hours in a week. A balanced life says, to my rules, there's 56 hours to sleep, 56 hours to do whatever you want to do, and 56 hours has to be devoted to work. When you start a small business, you're everything. You have to eat, sleep, and drink this business. If you do it, and if you love what you're doing, you will love doing it, you got a real good shot of being successful.
But don't fool yourself.
Don't kid yourself. Don't fool yourself.
That's right.
Right.
Well, that's great, Cliff. And going into rule number 2, ties back into the Thomas Friedman thesis, think flat.
Right.
And if you start a business, one of the things that I've heard you say, if you're starting a business, make the world your business.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sit here saying, my world is right here in front of me, with a pair of blinders on.
Right.
Think the world. Now, that may sound a little grandiose to some, but this is a very key point that you've made. Broaden your horizons. Think globally. Customers, and this is a key issue. Customers on Cape Cod cannot sustain your business. So, and you need to think export. You need to think technology. You need to think of services, redistributing product, and so forth. This is a huge point. Rule number 2
right.
is think flat. Can
right.
you explain it to us?
Absolutely. When I say export, I don't mean to necessarily United Kingdom or Saudi Arabia. I'm talking export things over the Cape that go ahead and sell things to people living in Poughkeepsie, New York, through the technology, through your website. That's what I'm talking about, the ability of the small business person on Cape Cod to do business globally, most especially over the bridge.
Right. Well, for this show, we're going to wrap it up at this point. We have introduced the Fox Robbins Business Show.
Right.
And I hope there are many more to come. And we have introduced Cliff's Notes as a regular feature of this show going forward. And we also we introduced Cliff's top 10 rules for people who want to start a business. And this is based on a long horizon of starting your own business and helping others.
Right.
So we're going to, but we'll follow through on the next show and cover the other rules. And I wanted to thank our director, David Major. I would like to thank the Cape Cod Community Media Center for making this show possible. And we will see you next time.